and welcome. I'm Leanne Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. President Trump welcomes Netanyahu to the White House as tensions between the US and Iran continue to rise. 10 people, including the shooter, are dead in Canada's British Columbia after an attacker opened fire at a local high school. And police release a man held in connection to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance as the hunt continues for the mother of news anchor Savannah Guthrie. President Trump is hosting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House today as tensions continue over Iran's nuclear weapons program. Netanyahu is expected to encourage Trump to make a deal that would rein in Iran's uranium enrichment, as well as its support for its proxy groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. Iran, meanwhile, has said it will not limit its uranium enrichment, whilst Western sanctions continue to strain its economy. Speaking earlier to Fox News, Donald Trump said Iran would be foolish not to make a deal. Take a listen.
As you know, we have a massive flotilla right now going over to Iran. We'll see what happens. I think they want to make a deal. I think it'd be foolish if they didn't. We took out their nuclear power last time, and we'll have to see if we take out more this time. They want to make a deal. They wouldn't talk to anybody else, but they're talking to me. But, you know, it's a good question. A lot of people say no, and I would say that I'd rather make a deal. It's got to be a good deal. No nuclear weapons, no missiles, no this, no that, all the different things that you want. But some people worry that they've been very dishonest with us over the years, right? Very dishonest.
To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by Correspondent Sara Firth, who's in Washington, and Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddy Gray. Freddy, let's kick this conversation off with you, because what can we expect from Netanyahu's meeting with President Donald Trump, which is currently happening at the moment in the US?
Well, I believe this is the sixth time that Netanyahu and Donald Trump have met in Donald Trump's second term. I don't think there's any other world leader that has seen as much of Donald Trump as Netanyahu. He was there in Mar-a-Lago at Donald Trump's winter White House, as it's now called, at the turn of the year. And I think normally you get a lot of intrigue and not a lot of meaty statements out of both of them. So there will be, I think, polite statements, either them in person or readouts from both diplomatic calls. But I think what will then happen is we will get a sense of whether Netanyahu pushed for America to strike Iran, which is not necessarily guaranteed. He has actually recently, Israel has actually occasionally said to the Americans, now might not be the right time. They're not always gunning for America to strike Iran. Or you might get total silence. And if there's not a lot of briefing afterwards, that's usually a sign something dramatic is about to happen. And a lot of people will start thinking that means a military strike on Iran is imminent.
And it's really interesting because Netanyahu was actually meant to meet Donald Trump on the 18th of this month, and he pushed that meeting forward. And as you say, Freddie, it's the sixth time he's been over to the US a lot. So, Sarah, Trump said Iran would be foolish not to agree to a deal. Why has Iran stalled in actually closing off an agreement? Because we know these discussions about a nuclear deal are ongoing.
Yes, and you've had President Trump sort of repeatedly issuing that threat, and we heard him again speaking ahead of this meeting today here in Washington, saying that there is the possibility of further military action. So really applying that political pressure on Iran. But Leanne, from Iran's perspective here, you've got the country facing the biggest internal upheaval, a popular protest by the people, the Iranian people. That is what the leaders are going to be up against. And so their calculation here isn't necessarily centering diplomacy with the United States in these talks, although it is important because they are in a very weakened state. If you look back at the last strikes that the US and Israel carried out against Iran on their nuclear facilities. Now, we know that Netanyahu is going to be pushing President Trump on widening these US-Iran talks, focusing on trying to get the nuclear capabilities removed, focusing on possibly reducing their ballistic missile infrastructure. But important to look at this from what's actually happening on the ground in Iran, in particular with those protests. The leadership there, they're going to be coming at this from a survival perspective. They're not going to be wanting to do anything here that's seen as capitulation to America's demands.
And it's quite interesting because you talk about where Iran is coming from. And Freddie, I wonder if Donald Trump is thinking right now, I'm holding these negotiations with Iran. They're happening in Oman. And we're talking about nuclear. And Donald Trump has time and time again attacked Barack Obama's agreement that he made with Iran. And Donald Trump, I'm sure, is going to be looking for some kind of win in what's happening at the moment. He doesn't want to look weak either.
No, but Trump's problem is he likes very, very quick wins. And of course, it's not so long ago that he ordered Operation Midnight Hammer, which was the very large, impressive military strike on Iranian nuclear facilities. And he made out very firmly afterwards that Iran's nuclear facilities have been obliterated. And yet here we are now in February talking about how America, Iran and Israel can sew together a deal that would limit Iran's uranium enrichment capacities. And so it wasn't this one and done strike. And this is slightly the problem with Trump's diplomacy as well. I mean, I like the fact he's very pro-peace. I think that's good. But he does tend to have this I need to get this done quickly. It needs to be done now. And it does create results, but sometimes it creates fake results. And so people say, oh, well, this has been achieved. Peace has been achieved. Let's have a nice press conference and get on with it. I think that's the problem with this situation with Iran, and particularly a lot of things in the Middle East, is they are very, very complicated and hard to resolve. And they don't make for kind of quick wins.
And Sarah, that's a really interesting point because Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu might be pushing Donald Trump in another direction, but I think he is aware of another forever war as the midterms are approaching is not probably his best idea. But just before we go, Sarah, and wrap up this, I wanted to talk about the people who are living in Iran because Iran's a big country. We've seen these anti-government protests. It's very difficult to get the truth out of what's really happened during the crackdown. But we have to focus also on the peoples who's put their lives at risk.
Yes, Leanne, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I know you've been interviewing Iranians. I've been speaking to many Iranians outside the country right now. Pretty much everyone is saying the same thing, that look, whilst those protests and the crackdown that we saw from the leadership in Iran has fallen out of the headlines, was never massively in the spotlight in the first place, we still don't know the full scale of that bloody crackdown on the protesters. You've had people disappeared. We've had reports of torture, those protesters shot. So the scale of that still not known. And all of this is playing into what happens to the people on the ground, will be playing into the calculations being made by Iran's leadership right now. They are struggling internally. It's the biggest protest you've had since the 1979 revolution. That pressure internally is going to make a difference when it comes potentially to the outcome of these US-Iran talks. And very briefly, Leanne, we are getting some information here today as that meeting that's taking place behind closed doors with Netanyahu and President Trump, as that continues, we're hearing that the US is considering sending another aircraft carrier into the region. That's on top of the one already there. Really important development if that is verified, because it will increase potential strike capacity. It signals the seriousness of President Trump's threats to potentially again take military action if Iran doesn't give him what he wants. But as Freddie said there, you know, President Trump liking a quick win. We're really not sure here in the US what it is that President Trump wants to see from a final deal with Iran. We know that from the Israeli side, they said about the nuclear enrichment programs, getting that finished. We know that they want to target on ballistic missile capabilities, and also Israel saying they want to see Iran's support for militant groups in the region as part of those conversations. So that's going to be being discussed between President Trump and Netanyahu right now. But all of this, the outcome, whichever way it goes, obviously has that huge impact on the people of Iran, who are already facing such a difficult moment in their history.
Yes, and like you did say, Donald Trump is actually thinking about sending another aircraft carrier to the region. And also there's been satellite imagery showing US forces placing Patriot missile systems on mobile launchers at the Al Udeida air base in Qatar. So military movement is continuing. But thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Let's move on to another story. 9 people are dead and at least 25 are injured after a shooting in British Columbia in Western Canada. 6 victims were found inside Tumbler Ridge Secondary School, whilst others died nearby. Police are currently investigating the motive of the attacker, whose body was also found at the school. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney appeared tearful earlier as he spoke to reporters. Take a listen.
Very difficult day for the nation. This morning, parents, grandparents, sisters, brothers in Tumbler Ridge will wake up without someone they love. The nation mourns with you. Canada stands by you. I want to thank and pass on a number of world leaders who've reached out directly to me in solidarity and compassion.
Sarah, we see Mark Carney there, visibly shaken by events that have taken place. But what's the latest out of the high school shooting incident?
Yes, a very visibly emotional Prime Minister there of Canada. And Leanne, you know, those sentiments have been echoed by everyone around the country and around the world. You've had local authorities in Tumblers Ridge in British Columbia in Canada saying that the local mayor, I will probably know every victim. This is a small community. The estimates say it's some 2,400 people. Let's bring you up to speed on where the investigation's at. According to authorities, they say that 10 bodies have been recovered. They say that there were 6 victims and the suspected shooter dead at the school. There was a person who died being transported to the hospital, and 2 further bodies recovered from a residence that authorities are saying is connected to the shooting. Now, we've heard from the head of the the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They have said today, Leanne, that they do think that they know who the shooter is, that they think an identity for that person. They're not releasing that information right now. They say for matters of privacy, the families are still going to be dealing with the information being brought to them by authorities. We know that authorities are looking for a motive as to why exactly this terrible tragedy happened. You know, Leanne, we saw the images coming out of people coming from the school, their hands in the air, many of them students. And again, just reiterating, this is a very tight-knit community. Everyone's going to be feeling the impact of this. A local pastor saying, walking the corridors of that school will never be the same.
And Freddie, we see this mass shooting happening in Canada. Obviously, it's something that we often think about when we think about mass shootings. We think about America. And the question about gun laws always comes up after an incident like this. How strict are the gun laws in Canada?
Well, they're pretty strict, particularly in comparison to America and a lot of states in America. You have to have a license. You have to store the gun properly. It's similar to the UK, in fact, in terms of guns are strictly controlled in order for people to be able to hunt and shoot and so on. But obviously, the shooter in this case was able to get hold of a gun. And it makes me think about a conversation I had a while ago with one of our columnists here at The Spectator. It's called Lionel Shriver, and she wrote a book called We Need to Talk About Kevin, which I'm sure some of your viewers may have read or heard of. There was a film of it too. And that was about a boy doing a school shooting. And I've talked to Lionel about it a lot because whenever there was a sort of mass shooting in the news, we'd talk to her and we'd say, what can you say? And she said she hated being asked about it because she deliberately made the killer in her novel use a crossbow, not a gun, because she didn't want the book to be about guns or the gun debate, because that's the sort of the endless media debate whenever there's a school shooting in America, because she wanted to be about the nature of evil. Yeah. And I think it's interesting that, maybe it's not just guns in America. Maybe it's American culture we are catching up with American culture in many ways. America has been a much more online culture. And I don't want to get into the there's a lot of talk on the internet about the suspected killer at the moment, and we shouldn't get into that because we don't know. But what does seem obvious is that what's happened in the last year is that we have seen young men being radicalized online in very strange ways. It's not just Islamic terrorist radicalism. It can be far right radicalism. It can be far left radicalism. And it's wrapped up in lots of irony and memes. And it's very hard for people who aren't familiar with the online world to decipher. But that's what's going on, is a kind of warping of young brains online. And that is leading them to do terrible things, although, as I say, we don't know for sure in this instance.
Yes, absolutely, Freddie, you're right. We don't know for sure in this instance, but I'm sure in the coming days they'll have a look at the online activity, and also that will something that will come up. But, Sarah, we talk about gun laws, and Freddie just mentioned the nature of evil and online activity, but it's going to be so difficult to stop something like a mass school shooting.
Yes, incredibly difficult. And look, authorities right now are very clear that they are focused on the community, on providing that support. We've heard everyone from the Prime Minister to the mayor of that area saying that there will be mental health provisions for those who've been affected, but that pretty much everyone will be affected. Again, the mayor saying that he will likely know all those victims. He said, we don't call them residents, we call them family. This is a close community that are going to have been impacted here, but no question there is going to be deep scrutiny over how this was able to happen, why the shooter was able to get to the school in this way to carry out the shooting. They will certainly be looking at the gun laws, even though, as Freddie pointed out there, Canada having a very, very strict regulation around their weapons. But we know that police are really going to be focusing on the motive here. They're going to be running down the leads at the moment, trying to find that information. They have said that they believe they've identified the shooter. They're not releasing the information at this stage of the investigation, but they have said they're going to be looking to try and understand why this tragedy has happened. We know in the immediate minutes after the shooting started that police described the suspected shooter as a female in a dress with brown hair, but police have been very cautious since then to give any further detail as yet around the identity or the gender of that shooter. But you can see how deeply the community has been impacted already. The country's Prime Minister saying there, this is parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters in Tumbler Ridge, the small community, the foot of the Rocky Mountains, that are going to be dealing with this terrible tragedy for a very, very long time to come.
Sarah and Freddie, thanks for your thoughts there. Let's move on to another story now. And police have released a man detained in connection to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. The 84-year-old mother of US news presenter Savannah Guthrie has been missing for more than a week now. The FBI had previously released images and video of a masked person at Nancy Guthrie's door. It follows a fresh plea from her daughter Savannah. Take a listen.
Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help. So I'm coming on just to ask you, not just for your prayers, but no matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation.
Sarah, as Savannah Guthrie says, their hour of desperation. But what more has the FBI investigation actually revealed?
Yes, Leanne. So we're 11 days in since Savannah Guthrie's mum, Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, went missing. You've had the investigation see a number of stages up until very recently. The authorities saying they didn't have any suspects or people of interest in this case. There has, though, been this major development over the last 24 hours because you've had the FBI release some video footage that was able to be recovered from that doorbell camera. Now, at the start of the investigation, we were told by authorities there wasn't a subscription, so there wasn't the images available. That has now been recovered. It has been made public. The FBI have put it out on their social media channels. Savannah Guthrie has put it out on her social media channels, saying anyone with any information should be getting in touch. And they're hoping that this will be the break in the case that they have so clearly needed with so little leads until now. They're saying they're calling on the public, really. Look at the way this man or woman, this person moves. Look at some of the features that are noticeable in the video that's been released. You can just see the eyes behind a mask. You can see the mouth with what appears to be facial hair. The person approaches the camera, walks back, looks for some vegetation to try and, it seems from the video, cover the camera. So the authorities are going to be analysing all the details of that, seeing if they can get any information from the clothing, from the weapon that is being holstered. But as of yet, we know that in the wake of that video being released, they did take someone into custody for questioning. They carried out a search on a property. That person, we've been told, has been released. And so at this point, it seems that authorities are in very much the same position that they were almost at the start of this, Leanne, without any strong leads right now, but very much hoping that in the wake of this video being released, someone somewhere might recognize something about this person that will lead to them finally getting some information about the possible whereabouts of Nancy.
Yeah, but it's pretty interesting, Freddie. Like Sarah said, 11 days on since Nancy went missing, we almost seem to be back at square one. What are your thoughts on Nancy Guthrie right now?
Well, it's very difficult with all the online sort of speculation that's going on to remain focused on what a sad and terrible and worrying story this is. And obviously, one's first thought ought to be, let's hope that Nancy Guthrie is alive and survives this ordeal. I'm just slightly, aside from that, I'm just slightly bemused by the way that these crimes develop through the media these days. Obviously, we're talking about in the media now. I don't want to get on a high horse or anything, but it's as though everybody on the internet starts playing detective and we all become sort of online sleuths looking at photos, trying to develop theories. I've heard all sorts of very wild theories about what might have happened here. And what's interesting now is that it's not just the public that do this, but it's also the authorities. Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, released this video on his own Twitter handle as if sort of giving the public some clues that they can sort of feed into their virtual reality game of hunt for the kidnapper. And I just find it's a very strange world that we live in when crime is sort of prosecuted online. We've just been talking about that in terms of online radicalization and everybody trying to figure out who the killer is, what their motives are. Just the way that crime is processed through the media and social media is very, very strange.
And also, Sarah, I just want to talk to you right now because there's been some letters, and they've been letters to TMZ and to other news channels saying that we want a ransom. And it's been so interesting because, like Freddie said, all of this is playing out online in many ways. But also I spoke to a former NYPD police officer earlier, or lieutenant, and he was basically saying to me, this just never happens. They don't go and negotiate with TV channels. They go to the family themselves. And there's been so much speculation about this in the US too.
Yes, and it's already so high profile given that Nancy is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, who is a well-known, very well-loved TV host here in the United States. But it's been compounded by the fact, as you said, Leanne, that you've had these ransom notes. The first one, to take you back to the start of this investigation, when Nancy had gone missing and the police launched this investigation, you had a ransom note going to the one major media outlet here in the US and a couple of local media outlets. That reportedly in the note saying that they had asked for a ransom of some $6 million in Bitcoin for Nancy's return. Now, it's important to say that none of the notes, the two notes that have reportedly been sent, they haven't been verified as authentic by the authorities. But what we saw in the wake of the first note was Savannah Guthrie and her family appearing on her social media, putting out this video, asking for a proof of life. There was then reports of a second ransom note sent to local media outlets. We don't know whether or not there was proof of life included in that, very little detail. And again, to reiterate, that ransom note also not verified as authentic by the authorities. But again, we saw Savannah Guthrie and her family in a very emotionally loaded video, speaking at points directly, it seems, to the possible kidnapper, saying, we understand, we will pay. So these are, sort of open lines of communication that have appeared to have been established between the family and the possible kidnappers. But we haven't got much in the way of authorities giving verified information around that. And as Freddie said there, this is at the heart of it, a human story where you've got these children missing their mother, Savannah Guthrie, in one of the videos, really trying to tell people about who Nancy is, saying she's kind, she's loving, she's a pillar in her community. And at one point in the video saying she is our heart, she is her home. The family are very clear. They still think that Nancy is out there. They are holding out hope with all these different leads, with the possible ransom notes, with the social media appeals, and now with this video that appears to have been recovered, that image being put out to the public, and the family very much hoping that that might lead to a break in the case.
Yeah, right now there seems to be more questions than answers, but thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Stay right there, so we move on now. And officials in Cambodia say they have recently shut down around 200 scam centres as part of a major crackdown on transnational fraud. The government is vowing to eradicate all cybercrime networks by April. Patrick Fock reports.
In Cambodia's Kampot province, authorities offer rare access to a scam centre in a bid to show they're tackling operations cheating people out of billions of dollars around the world. Inside this sprawling complex, which sits near Cambodia's border with Vietnam, rooms filled with rows of computer stations and desks strewn with documents instructing how to scam Thai victims. On one sheet, it reads, "Don't start by asking your name because it may sound too unfriendly."
There are about 190 locations that we have sealed off now. We have also carefully sealed off both the compound and locations that are in the gated housing area, in villagers' houses and condos and so on. There are big cases with 37 people who were arrested during the raids and sentenced by the court.
Cambodian officials have vowed to eradicate all scam centres in the country before the Khmer New Year in April. It follows the arrest of dozens of senior crime figures linked to the centres and after the US indicted a China-born alleged scam kingpin. China then extradited Chen Zi in what was seen as the strongest international move so far against the criminal networks. Though at the Kampot complex, known as My Casino, there were no arrests.
We have only about 1,000 policemen in the entire province, and there are about 300 military policemen. Even with both forces combined, we still can't stop them because there were about 6,000 to 7,000 of them when they left this place.
In recent weeks, thousands of scam workers, many of whom were trafficking victims, confined in brutal conditions, have fled the compounds seeking to return home. Rights group Amnesty International has called it a humanitarian crisis. Cambodia has long played down the existence of scam compounds in the country, but reports show such criminal activity has been rampant. Many critics doubt the latest campaign to crack down on scamming will be effective. Patrick Falk, Al Arabiya English.
Freddie, let's start with you on this. What makes Cambodia a hotspot for scam centres like Patrick Falk's been telling us?
I think very bad enforcement of law and order. Cambodia's come under quite a lot of pressure internationally to address this problem. The trouble for them is they're becoming a bit like Colombia was to drugs, or is still to drugs in some ways. What they are that country for fraud and online scamming. And it's a very, very lucrative business. Anywhere between $50 to $100 billion a year is generated, it is estimated, from this fraud in Cambodia. And it's once you get fraud at that level, it starts to get into politics, it starts to get into big business. And there are lots of scandals emerging in Cambodia of corruption at the highest levels involving this scam. And so it's really got embedded in the country at a very high level. And they are now trying to clamp down on it. But it's clearly quite difficult because of just the extent of it. You have these huge warehouses with hundreds or thousands of sometimes often human trafficked people being forced to carry out these AI scams or to supervise these AI scams. It's a really terrible story and one that doesn't really get picked up enough, I don't think.
And as Freddie said there, you know, people are human trafficked. It's become a big problem in Cambodia, infiltrating through into different sections of society. Sarah, what is the answer here?
Well, Leanne, this is what we've heard Amnesty International calling a humanitarian crisis. And this focus in the investigations into the scale of that humanitarian crisis is really part of what's driven this crackdown and what it's hoped authorities are going to be tightening up the monitoring, dissolution of these types of scam and fraud centres. Let's talk you through some of what we've seen submitted by investigators to the United Nations in their reporting over this escalating humanitarian crisis. They say that those workers who are often held against their will are forced to work 14 to 18-hour work days. The report detailing that they believe many of the workers that they are signing up for legitimate work. In many instances, they are held against their will and they're forced to pay a ransom for them to be freed. That report was submitted to the United Nations Human Rights Council last May. You've now seen this crackdown on the transnational fraud. So you've got these romance investment scams, you've got cryptocurrency scams, but as well as being transnational in the fraud, it's transnational in the victims that are being used to then go out and create more victims with these scams. It's estimated that around 100,000 people were held in this type of involuntary situation where they're being forced to carry out these scams in these centres in 2023. The number, it's thought, will have climbed even higher since then. It is a very difficult, very deadly situation in some circumstances for those that are caught in this situation, and one that it's hoped this crackdown on these fraud and scam centres will be able to now address.
And, you know, Freddie, we just heard Sarah there talking about the people who are human trafficked and are carrying out these scams. But we can't forget people who are sitting at home who are being scammed, because AI is a huge thing now. And I'm sure all of us have had a scam email or a scam call. And it's so difficult now to know what's true and what's not.
It's getting increasingly difficult. AI is getting more and more sophisticated, not just voice faking now, there can be video faking. So you can have people. I heard a story, a friend of the family who ended up giving away money to the actor Matthew McConaughey, who she believed, she was an old lady, she believed she was in some kind of relationship with Matthew McConaughey. And this is the classic form the scam takes. They call it pig butchering is the term, where it's you fatten up the pig, that is you get them on the hook, you present yourself as a wealthy person or a very successful person. They can't believe they're talking to someone that's successful. They get excited. There's a lot of lonely people out there who only have their phones and their computers to talk to people through. And then you, over a course of time, you build up a certain element of trust, and then you get them to hand over all their money in some complicated way. So I think just everybody has to be, and we can think that we're clever and above it, but actually it's quite easy to find yourself chatting to a bot and not realizing that it's a bot. And you could have given away some important information or got yourself into a terrible situation pretty quickly. So yeah, I think just everybody should be aware that this is happening a lot, and it's a highly, highly sophisticated business.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Now, it's the time of the show where Freddy and Sara have chosen two of their quirkiest stories of the day. And Freddy, I want to talk to you about this story because I've been finding it absolutely fascinating. There is this Norwegian biathlete, and he's in the Winter Olympics at the moment, but his, I don't know what you can call them, shenanigans outside of the Olympics have been causing a stir.
Yeah, I mean, some people think we in the West are too soppy about stuff, and they're absolutely right. This guy won a bronze in the Winter Olympics, and while being interviewed, having won this bronze, he broke down in tears and confessed that, suggested he may have won gold, were it not for the fact that he is so emotionally overwhelmed because he made a terrible mistake. He'd met the most wonderful person, but he cheated on her recently, and he felt very terrible about that. I don't know about you. I mean, some people, and I know some people found it heartwarming. I don't find it heartwarming. I think it's sort of emotionally manipulative on any number of levels, and probably not the place to do it. I think if I were on the receiving end of that treatment as a man, or even if I were a woman, I would think, no, that's not the way I'd like to be reconciled with, unless, of course, he cleared it with her, which I don't believe we know that he did.
Well, apparently, I think he had revealed it to her that he had cheated on her. Then he went.
Told her.
Yeah, he told her, didn't he?
And he didn't tell her he was going to then talk about it to the whole world.
Well, apparently, she has come out and said she's not going to forgive him, even after. Good for her. I don't know. I sort of feel a little bit. I know I'm normally not a soft person. I normally take a hardline approach on these things. But in a way, I think, oh, the poor guy. He'd only been with her 3 months, then had a little slip, confessed to it, and now is devastated. I mean, is there not a little
win? A terrible, terrible precedent, Leanne. I mean, now all men will think all we've got to do is win a bronze. We can get away with everybody we want.
A little slip, Sarah.
If he'd won a gold, maybe she'd have considered taking him back. You've got a very good heart, Leanne, but the internet has spoken. I saw one comment saying, look, we have taken a vote. We've all talked about it. Do not take him back. And I think that kind of sums up the sentiment of most people. But you have a very good heart, Leanne, and it's nice to know that you would give people a second chance.
Yeah. I think so. I saw this quote, I quite liked it. Dumbest thing I've ever seen. You never win back ladies this way, only on a film or in a film, not real life. That was another comment on social media. So social media has spoken. And Sara, I want to talk about my favourite pop star ever. I had posters of her all over my bedroom. Why is Britney Spears in the news today?
I had posters of her too. I was trying to think of a Britney pun, but, Britney Spears now, she's, known around the world. She has just sold, Leanne, her music catalogue for a whopping $200 million. It is a huge figure. Now, the industry has seen these types of deals in the past where musicians sell their catalogue. You've had the likes of Justin Bieber have very high-profile deals like this. We are told that she has said in the wake of of selling this music. This is her legacy, really, her musical legacy, and through her whole career. This is all those hits. So Hit Me Baby One More Time, Pieces of Me, very, very famous songs from fans like you and I who followed her career over the years. They all are now in the hands of this group that she has sold the rights to. It is a major move, and Britney's saying that she's not going to be returning to music. It's been many, many years since she last performed. And of course, we saw a huge amount of controversy and focus around Britney Spears when she had her conservatorship ended in 2021. She still remains in the headlines, but not often these days for her music. And now that music catalogue being sold on, and that huge price tag of $200 million.
And you know what? I think one of her songs was called Toxic. And really, Freddie, that's what your athlete at the Winter Olympic Games has basically been.
Not to you.
No,
Was it an Oops, I Did It Again, maybe? That's another one that would work from Britney's catalogue.
That could be at the next Olympics. I think, yes, I've followed Britney Spears' story a little bit. I can't say I'm a fan like you guys, but it does seem she's had a really terrible time. So I think she's probably well out of it, and it's nice that she's getting so much money.
Yeah, absolutely. I must admit, I think the song Toxic was worth a lot more than what she got, 200 million. Come on, guys, it's Britney Spears. But thanks to our guest today, Correspondent Sara Firth and Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddy Gray. That's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on X. G&T will be coming up next. Goodbye, good evening. Thank you for watching.